Good morning, everybody, and welcome to The Art as Well. Before I introduce our guest this morning, I have a few little notices to read out. You might remember before we said that any of the featured artists we have, if they're having any events or exhibitions on, that we read them out at the start of the episode. And we have three quick notices for you this morning. Okay, Pamela Breed tells us that she has two solo exhibitions opening on Thursday in Ballycroy National Park called Islands or An Imol, paintings of a selection of Ireland's offshore islands from the mainland. And that's on till the end of April. The second is called Yanadu, or Replace in English, and opens on Thursday next at An Cultorlan, Falls Road, Belfast at 6 p.m. And these comprise etchings and paintings in response to a cycle around the Midlands. And that continues to the end of April. And in fact, Pamela did speak about that in her recent chat with us on The Art as Well. Michelle Boyle tells us that she is curating a retrospective of Patrick Reel's work, and that's on the State Apartments in Dublin Castle. And she has compiled and edited the catalogue, which is a fine document and well worth getting. The exhibition is on till the 1st of August, and Michelle has done this voluntarily, so any sales will help her recoup the costs. So please, if you can, support this particular publication and the exhibition. I certainly intend to go into that very soon. And finally, Tim Goulding is giving an artist talk today at 2:30 p.m. in the Lavitt Gallery, Wandsworth Quay, Clarksbridge in Cork. And on to today's guest, who is Paul Mosse. Paul is an artist, sculptor from Kilkenny. And before I start this, I just want to apologize for the quality of signal, which was very poor, unfortunately, but it does, I think, improve during the course of the interview. So please bear with me while I introduce Paul Mosse.
Both my parents had been to art school. My father was going to go into business. He knew anyway, but he had a few years, and he went to the Ruskin School in Oxford. He had been trying to be apprenticed, I think, to Eric Gill, the sculptor, but that didn't happen, probably luckily with Gill's history. But anyway, that my parents collected art, and most of their kids have gone into the arts in some form or other. In fact, all of them really. So it was there. We grew up with it. I didn't start particularly early, and I went to art school. I went to a Quaker school in England in the 60s,
yes,
which was lucky to get out of Ireland in the 60s. Really, I was a new world. Then I went to London, Chelsea. And which was an interesting experience. It was very, what's the word? It was like doing a postgrad from day one. So you either survived or didn't. If you do well, I had a breakdown quite early on, and
was this during while you were in Chelsea?
Yes, yeah. So I had to repeat a year, and I came back and did it, but. That's been a mainstay in my life anyway, and I think it probably is why I do what I do. It's a great trade, because you can, if things are going bad, you just you go to bed for a few months. But
it was particularly bad when you were in England.
I would say 10 years of that.
Right. So why did you come back to Ireland, and did that have any benefit?
Benefit, yes, it did. I came back really just to, I think, hide, come back and recoup. Yes. I was at home at first, and but I started at that stage. It was interesting. For me, it was I'd been tied up with sort of hard edge abstraction in college very much, which I could do, but it back to me at all. So when I came back here, I sort of gave up for a couple of months altogether. I just thought I was, I might going to be a gunsmith or something like that. Mm-hmm. And but then I started drawing with a pencil, which I'd done from when I was younger. And that took off, and it gave me something back, which is the essence of the whole game. And I got great encouragement from a neighbor, Barry Cook, the painter, who was nearby, fellow fisherman and enthusiast. And between his enthusiasm and my father's backing me and enthusiasm, that really got me going, I think.
Yes.
So so that was the beginning. After that, I just kept going.
Yeah. Were you based in Thomastown? Because I know Barry Cook was living there for a while.
No, I was. My family home at that stage was in Bennett's Bridge, near Thomastown. Barry had got several different houses down Thomastown Way, and then moved up to Sligo. But I was in Bennett's Bridge. Then I went down to Cork and stayed with the Allen family in Ballymaloe Cookery School.
Yes.
Who became second family to me and were so generous and have also bought a lot of my work, which was great. I had therapy down there for 5 years, went back, then came back over to Kilkenny again, met Marianne, got married, had kids after I was 50. So I'm a late developer in just about everything. You know, maybe I'll live forever just to catch up. But yeah, so and
yeah,
that's been, life has been good after that.
Sure. And while you were down in Ballymaloe, did you brush up on your culinary skills at all?
No. Very, very early on, I asked Doreen Allen how long the potatoes took to cook, and she gave up. I was the only failure, and so they fed me after that.
And they have a very important collection of your work, as you mentioned.
Yeah, they have. They have a big collection anyway, and they're but a lot of my stuff I could, if I had a retrospective, they could do it really
single-handedly. Yeah.
Yes, single-handedly. Yeah.
And tell me how and when did you meet Marianne?
My father died in 1986. Marianne was over here in 1987. This is the way I see a map of life.
Sure.
And she was over, and she was staying with neighbours, and did a master's in art history in Trinity at that stage. And
she's originally from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, and she was doing a master's on Irish high crosses, so it's where the crosses are. So it was a great time looking around.
Yeah.
And then my father kept me off the breadline from early on. And there was a buyout, and that gave me quite a lot of money. So we could buy a house in South Kilkenny, which is where we are now.
All right. Okay.
So luck was on my side as ever in financial things.
Sure.
So between that and getting Ace Dona money, I was able to buy time to keep on working, which is what I think is the most important thing of all, just having time.
Yes.
You know yourself.
And the family were involved in the milling business, the flour milling.
Yeah, they were for generations. They were in the milling business. So I grew up, playing in a flour mill, which was heaven really, and living on the river. I could fish within 2 minutes of after lunch sort of thing.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
that's all been important, very important to me.
Very good. And the two sons you have, one is a blacksmith in the UK and the other's in
Yeah,
Trinity.
he's a blacksmith just setting up. He's 24 and has done metal restoration as well. And then that's John, and Matthew then is at Trinity College doing nanophysics, whatever that is, I don't know.
Can't help you either.
Yeah. But so yeah, they're the meaning of my life, actually, to be quite honest.
Fantastic.
You know, art is only second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you say, you're fortunate in that you avoided the breadline, but which allowed you effectively what you really wanted to do, as against doing something that was commercially attractive to the market.
Yeah, I think once I got the canoeist money, I was also started working in a different way, because I didn't need to sell stuff. And I don't think this happened consciously, but I started so, but I worked a lot faster. It's one thing you do with kids as well. You have to work faster. You don't have as much time, but also kids play. And that was the great experience, is to see, not to take the bloody thing too seriously, just play with stuff. Yeah. And stop thinking.
Yes.
So then I become much more of looking through skips and getting my material there. It's cheap as well.
Sure, sure. How would you describe yourself, or your work, your genre?
I started out as a painter.
Yes.
And then I got into, after a while, I was a bit like Frank Stella, who always said he was 2.5 dimensions. And then it went more and more into sculpture. So the way I work is very physical and sensual, in the better sense of the word. And I love the feel and touch. The sculpture was a natural. For the last 4 or 5 days, I've been just scraping the paper off egg cartons that I glued from the inside and then wet from the outside. So there's a lot of mindless stuff that can go on, which is where for me, the best things happen.
Yes.
And I love physical stuff, like fishing, your chest wading right up to your, literally up to your chest in water. And I was always a wildfowler, and I loved being out in the mud and slime and wet. So all of that stuff has always been fairly close to my heart. So it's a sort of regression, an old man's regression now into that world.
Paul, we're going to have a look at your studio, because you're obviously not there. So you did a video for us, which is super. And I'm going to try and see if we can screen share that and show it. And if you have anything to talk about in terms of explaining to people where things are and what they are, well, then by all means, just butt in and say so. Okay, can you see that?
Yep. There's nothing coming up yet. Yep. Yeah, that's I've got so much stuff I've had to greenhouse.
Yes, yes.
This is into the big studio. I built this studio. It's totally full. These are big tangles of wire and other materials glued together. Just looking around where the stuff is being stored.
I see your egg boxes there.
Yep. And
So primarily, is the material plastic or metal?
There's a big antique wildfire. Everything, a lot wire that they use for wrapping flowers. A lot of plastic. I sort of abstract it always. I never have anything that can be recognized if I can help it.
Okay.
And glue, paint. I used to use. I loved it, but it was poisoning me. That's a bittern, a bird like the. I've had a long interest in taxidermy. I bought that in Douglas Hyde Gallery years ago. There's a great northern.
Here's your collection of fishing rods.
Yeah. I've always collected the vintage ones.
And reels.
And reels, yeah. Rods are cheap, reels are expensive.
Are they? Yes.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned just while we're here that and I don't think it's on this particular video, that you have a crow's nest, and you said you were intrigued by the structure of it and how almost permanent it was.
Yeah.
So all of these things are influencing your work. Would I be right?
Yeah. It's a friend from us who gave it to me, just having had to push it up into the store. I've run out of space. That's really all it is. Oh yeah, those are stuff there up in the background is found things as well. More there's the distance between found. Yeah, that's a big panel I did during lockdown. It's plenty of glue, wire, and medical cotton wool.
Okay. And this is just outside your studio.
That's the structure. This is outside. We live on so I've sort of come home to the mill in some ways, and the huge bands of trees. The trees have meant everything to me. I would love to live in, I don't know, Scottish Islands or Arran or something like that, but I'd miss the trees.
Yes. Catherine Gagan says, we have a question here from Catherine Gagan. Hi, Paul. Did you ever use Wasp's paper nest? They're so intricate.
Yes, I've got them all right. I've never actually used them, but I've had them and kept them until they collapse. I loved all that. I've got 2 swarms in the roof of the studio anyway.
Have you?
Yeah, they're doing very well.
Right. Let's go into things like exhibitions that you've done, because I know there was one exhibition that you did not so long ago, which was described by the gallerist John Daly as the strongest contemporary show he's ever seen in the world, and certainly a significant marker in Ireland's art market. Do you recall that particular one? The What's with the Apocalypse?
It was in visual in Carlo.
Yeah.
And the name of and they threw everything at it. They really pulled up every stop. I don't think I could have got better.
Yes.
Yeah. The title came from Pat Murphy of RHA. Came into my studio and looked around and said, "What's with the apocalypse, eh?" So that's how the title came.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And then when the show was in visual in Carlo, and I had the whole building, which is massive space.
Yeah.
But I filled it anyway, and it was great. They took over the whole thing, cleared out my studio totally. So I then got somebody in to structure my studio, and everything came back to it. But
Yes.
the show itself was so professionally handled and caused me so little angst. It was I couldn't have got better in terms of professionalism. I've had a couple of bigger shows in Butler Gallery and also Douglas Hyde. I had a great rapport with them in Douglas Hyde and John Hutchinson, who taught me one main thing, which is to leave things alone, not to frame them or dust them or anything. Just leave them as you meant to do them. Don't tart them up for anybody. And I've tried to hold to that as much as I can. It's a bit like archaeology. It's the little details that are there that count as well.
Sure. Okay, Paul, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of your work now. And the signal seems to have improved a wee bit, which is great. Yeah. So if you could talk us through some of these, we look at a few of them, and then we'll sort of open it up to the floor. Okay.
Yeah. That's I had a huge tin of glue. Resin. The dreadful resin.
Oh yes.
And after poisoning myself with it at one stage. I came out and it sort of eczema all over. Anyway, I put it away, and about 15 years later, I opened up the thing, and it had frozen into a wonderful big lump of crystal. And this stuff was on the top, and it was the rust and everything. And it sort of reminded me of the meat inside a lobster's claw when you pull out the meat.
Yes, it does, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all it is. Yeah.
And tell me, do you put titles on your work?
No, I don't. I'll call things like I call that lobster claw or something. It reminds me of it, and I can, say to somebody, you know what I mean. Yeah. But no, I will call them pet names afterwards. I used to do the 22-7-47 or whatever on them, like a couple of painters did, but it doesn't really matter. But they're definitely not about anything, It doesn't. This isn't some profound subject about Mongolia,
I know. Yeah.
That's pellets. Insulation pellets, glue, paint, all flowing down. I've put some of these in Perspex boxes just to keep them dust free for the moment. But if I was exhibiting them, I'd take the plastic boxes off. It makes them too precious otherwise.
Yes. Yeah.
John Hutchinson would stop me doing it anyway. That's a funny bit of plaster. That's one of my it's a bit of plaster which was left over, and I found out outside the studio in the rubbish in amongst a fire of stuff I'd had, and it's so, I don't know what it is. It reminds me of de Kooning. It reminds me of a whole lot of things. But it was important to keep for some reason. And not by me. I don't know who.
And Paul, would you generally work outdoors? Is there a lot of flamethrowers?
I do if I can. Yeah, I do if I can. I love it outdoors in good weather.
Yes, and
I feel better for it. In the open. But a lot of it is, like we'll be in the house just scraping away at the egg boxes, or it'll be. But I'll work outdoors sometimes just because it's the only space left.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's again, that's those sheets are more or less wood glue with stuff stuffed in them, and then peeled back and paper scraped off them, and it's a fairly brutal thing. I just stopped at that stage, and I liked it, and that's when you stop or whatever.
I was going to ask you that. You know, at what stage do you know that it's ready, it's finished?
That was always the problem, and you know, everybody always said, you know, just bloody leave the thing alone, you know. If you don't, you just carry on until either it's like a child that has grown up and it's outside you, or it's you can't do any more to it, or it's half good and it's good enough to keep, not throw away. All of those things.
Yes.
But I don't know. I always thought there was an end, and some people kept on saying, no, there isn't an end.
And would you work on one piece at a time, Paul, or would you go back to pieces?
Not so much go back to pieces. I would work. I used to reckon I was always working on a dozen, and that useful for preciousness, because if you're working hard at a thing, it doesn't work out, you leave it by and you'll come back to it, and you're not precious whether you throw it away or you chew it up in it and make something new of it, or tickle it here, there, or anywhere. And so it's a good thing, and also all your eggs aren't in one basket, you know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So no, I would say I'm working on a hell of a lot of different things. Okay. That's another one of the glue tins with the resin now, and the resin has taken on the rust, and it's an odd thing. It's
amazing colors.
Yes, I love the world of wetness and glue, not glues, slime and dirt and all of those things. I think that's why I liked fishing or wildfowling, but also one of the things I had in common with Barry Cook was he was one of the few people who could paint wetness, and I loved that world of water and frog spawn, as I see in this thing somewhere.
Yes.
All of those sort of things, and they're not solids, and I think the visual arts are a bit tied up with solids too much. You know?
Okay.
That's just made out of I think beeswax. Yeah, just
really?
I molded it in some sort of way and then peeled it out, and then it sort of collapsed of its own accord. And
is it, I see that's in a glass or perspex.
So yes, but I like the wax, and I liked the fact you could see through it.
Yes.
That's a bit earlier one, and that's it's the white grid. I'm not quite sure across it, but there's a lot of other stuff that's like water and glues, jelly. I'd love jelly as a sculptural subject. I'd probably eat it. Yeah, that sort of, and that's why resin and things like amber with insects in it. Fascinating.
Oh yeah. And did you ever paint over your work, or are you using the natural colors that it
I'll add to it and paint over. Yes, I'll be that white grid was glued on. That was a stencil I'd cut out from something else, and I glued on over it.
Yes.
So it hasn't. I don't think it quite works, but it works enough to keep it. That's folds of glue that were just put one on top of the other and accumulated up to I think they were in a plastic box, and then I cut the box away, so it gave it a basic structure.
All right.
And,
yeah. They look like packets.
Like what?
Packets, of substance in a plastic bag, see-through bag.
Yeah. I'm fascinated in a ghoulish way by CSI, crime scene investigation stuff. That whole world and archaeology and that sort of thing. And now there's wonderful films of seeing below the sea surface to ships that are below, using electrical devices to map it out. All of those things are wonderful.
Sonar.
Yes, absolutely superb. Yeah.
I mean, when you're producing something like this, are you? What's going through your mind, Paul?
Very, very little. No, seriously, sorry.
But you did say that you do your best to try and work from your chin down.
Yes, I do. Yeah. I think if I think myself into it, I'm not very good with conceptual ideas. I would have loved to have been a philosopher in a different life if I hadn't been dyslexic and I'd been a little bit brighter. But it wouldn't have given me enough things back, I don't think, and that's why making things gives you something directly back. Yes. You may not have it. One of the critical things I had early on was I was going to go to university, and I went into, I think, Reading Berkshire University, and looked down their library and saw about 10 miles of books, and it was quite critical in that I went back to school and I said, I'll do one little thing of my own, because I would be swamped by all of these ideas, and I would be lonely in it. Whereas if you make one little thing, even if it's a trout fly you're tying, it's yours and it's something about you.
Yes.
And I need to have things around me. I collect things and I love things. So it was important. But to get back to the thing, no, I don't think I will think, oh, I will make a big block of all of these things that are left over, but I won't try and make it aesthetic, because if I start thinking about it in an aesthetic way, it'll turn out derivative of other people, which I'm very, very easily done. And from early on, I had trouble with composing compositions of paintings particularly, and they always looked like somebody else's. And it wasn't that I wanted to be individualistic, but they were boring. I'd already seen somebody else doing them. I didn't want to do them again. Yeah.
No, that's very, very interesting. Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah. And Paul, I mean, literally, do you run around in disguise robbing skips? Or where do you actually get your source material?
Not quite, but I have this one came from a farmer's field next door to me, and it was drainage pipes, and so I used a lot of sand and glue and broke them up, and they were already half broken anyway and stained, but I wanted to get rid of the fact that they looked like drainage pipes anyway, and more like, oh, I don't know, an intestine or something like that, or nothing that could be recognized
or a wasp,
labeled as a what?
A wasp.
Yes, a wasp. Yeah, anything. Yeah. And it was sort of dark and sinister, which I like anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a funny one. It was it's only made of I think a bag of cement that had got wet and was most of it had stopped, had become not concrete, but whatever cement becomes when it sets. And then a lot of it was still dry. So I hoovered out the dry stuff. And it became, it's a bit like the archaeology. I love watching archaeology and or dentistry, where they clean out your tooth or something like that. It's got all of those things, and it was all there to be found. It wasn't there was no composition or thinking. It was just, and then there was another piece that didn't work. So,
but are you ever tempted to sort of gild the lily, and
what add to them?
You seem quite restrained in a way.
I do. I think it's that thing that if I did it, I couldn't think up what to do. I more discover something like this now. I have no clue why it works, and it's one of the most awkward sort of paintings I've done. And these bloody drips coming down. I don't know what they are, but for some reason, it works for me. And it's very, very awkward, but it's still, I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't know what it's like properly, but I'll keep it until, I get fed up with it. And I like it enough to, I think it gives one of the things which I've liked in astronomy. I've been watching Brian Cox, which was a wonderful, and the ideas of the way we see space and read space and all the rest may be totally wrong. And so I like to think that things that are awkward and don't work visually may have something in them that's about that.
Yes.
You can't go too far in it, you go mad.
Yeah. Is Brian Fox the photographer? Brian Fox, is it?
Brian Cox, Cox, C-O-X. Yeah, he does Professor Brian Cox. He does all of the astronomy things, and he's very enthusiastic. And
sure,
I've seen him lecture. He was really brilliant.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to see all the influences that apply to you.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that I've a very varied group of friends and relations that I feed off. Just in, and I don't. I think the specialization we do nowadays is dangerous, because I have a really good interest in astronomy or archaeology. You don't have to be professional. You can just love it and do a bit of it.
Yes.
One of the great things now is people broadening out their interests and not just being a brain surgeon or a lawyer or whatever. They can do the law.
Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot to YouTube, I would have thought, because you get something in every possible subject you can think of in YouTube.
Yeah. I think that's one of the, with all of these technologies, they have their downside, but in general, compared to the 1950s or 60s when I grew up,
yes,
this is heaven,
Yeah.
In information. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a huge one. This one here, it's about 8 foot by 8 foot of wires. I call it 8 months because I just kept on adding. Then I cut it down the middle with not a chainsaw, but big clippers. And I thought it would divide into 2 pieces, but in fact, halfway through, it collapsed like a sod of turf or something sideways, and it hasn't moved since. So, But if I could only find a good home for it, it's taken up half of my studio.
You have to build
Going
on.
cheap to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the previous one of above it. That was shown, I think, in visual, and shown on the structure it's on.
Oh, was it?
Yes, I realized that a lot of the times the structure, which are made at the time just for holding it together, actually don't tart them up with something in Perspex and stainless steel. Leave them as they are, you know.
Yes. This one reminds me of the bird's nest.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. The bird's nest is a great thing. It stays together. The bird's nest. Oh,
yeah, you were saying, yeah.
This one is using a lot of colored stuff, but these are all glued bits with wire, and it's overkill, you know. But I never knew when to stop, you know.
Okay.
Always from very early on, I'd carry on. This piece right in front. This fold over I think it was a big lump of glue taken off the ground and folded over. It's a view from above anyway. But I used to call it elephant skin because it looked like one of those dreadful elephants that are found dead and rotting away.
Yes. So would you have put that material into the ground and then it takes an impression from the ground?
No, I think that one, I'm just trying to think now, but I think that was a piece of lino that had paint on it.
Yes.
And I peeled it up off the ground and it sort of buckled over.
Yeah.
And I added it there's a sculpture underneath it as well. So I think that's the memory of it. But it took on a lot of, this is for Hieronymus. I call it the Hieronymus Bosch one. It's slightly theatrical, but it's all cut and savage.
I'm just flicking through because I'm conscious of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the same one again from a different angle, if not the same family anyway, of big folds of glue. Glued.
I love this one.
Oh yeah.
That's very intriguing about this.
Yeah, that doesn't really. It's obviously what's the thousands of meat skewers and all the rest, and it's one of those ones that doesn't quite work. What's the word? Compositionally. Okay. But it's odd enough to keep, and I like the funny shape that I was still in it, of the plastic square. It dug into the whole lot. Those are the things you don't see until it's actually, you walk away from it and leave it alone for a while.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's the virtue, I think, of doing a lot of things at the same time. You don't overthink.
Yeah. Okay, Paul. I think that's it. Actually, that's them all. I'm going to open it to the floor, but before I do, I'm going to ask you what provided I remember. I ask all the artists, who is their favorite artist? Who would your favorite artist be?
We talked about that one, and there's plenty of if I was to be taught, it would be by Cézanne, but I don't actually enjoy the paintings, but they're quite heavy going. I love Bonnard. I love Otto Dix. I love, Keinholz. I love, and all the rest. But if you got a Shakespeare god, you'd go to Leonardo any day of the week. I think he's got such depth that nobody will ever achieve that again.
When we were chatting before, we were mentioning, was it Cézanne who painted the same mountain every time? He repeated and repeated.
It was,
But didn't you say that there was a connection there with the earthwork? that you're going back to the same thing,
yes,
but you're searching for a.
Yeah, I think he needed to have something probably that he knew quite well and could not hang his ideas on, because I think he found the ideas through the paint. I don't. It's one of my things that I think you can't translate words into paint or sculpture materials. I think there's two strands going on here. One is that we're in the mire of materials, and the other is more from the advertising, where you think up this is a pet theme of mine, sorry, think up an idea and then illustrate it. And I'm at the other end. Both are okay, but I would rather find things say things with the work. Does that make any sense?
It does. Unfortunately, I'm getting every second word. It's not as clear to me as I hope it is to everyone else. But I get the gist of what you're saying, Paul. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Before I'm muting people, I'm just going to read out a couple of questions. Now, some of them are to do with sorting out our problems, so I won't read those, obviously. Where do you source the Perspex boxes? Asks Eilish.
Easy. Kelpex in Tallow in County Waterford, West Waterford.
Kelpex.
Kelpex, Kelpex. And they're a wonderful professional firm who are doing displays for industry the whole time. And they've been inundated during lockdown because they do all the screens.
Of course, yes.
So they were one of the few ones that did well out of it.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's that question answered. Excellent. Bernadette Kiley, Paul, you were a philosopher. Sure, you knew that.
Well, that's a moot point or whatever they say. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Colin Eaton says, modest and magnificent at once. Some fantastic insights and advice here. Thank you, Paul. Admire your process and work.
Oh, thank you.
That's from Colin Eaton.
Thank you.
Maria Gabriela Serpi says, very original, as you are and wish to be known as. Wilma says, I really love your work. I'm a visual artist from the Netherlands, staying in an artist residency at the Faroe Islands. I find your work very interesting.
Oh, the Faroe Islands, God, lucky thing. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Maria Gabriela says also very creative to use waste material. Yeah, I mean, that's again something that is quite eco-sensible.
Yeah. I'll jump on the wagon if I can.
Well, you have. I think you were there before the wagon.
It's out of meanness.
I doubt that. I very much doubt that. All right, let's open it up. So I'm going to allow people to unmute themselves. Please only do so if you wish to ask a question in person.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi, Alan.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good.
Hi, Paul.
Hi. You have my piece up behind you.
Oh, have you?
I want to show you, but it's kind of far away, so I can't really, but I have a piece of Paul's here.
Yes.
And I absolutely love it. It reminds me of ice on the ground somewhere, because a lot of the material is some sort of plastic, Paul. I remember you telling me about it at the time, but I can't remember.
Wood glue, I think.
It's not resin, is it?
No, it's wood. The ordinary wood glue, Bostik or Evastik.
Yeah, but it's kind of molded or fashioned into just like thin ice, you know, almost like spread over a kind of a just something, you know. I don't know. And I have to say that I'm absolutely a massive fan of Paul's work. I think it's absolutely splendid, and always what he's done, so inventive, creative with materials, and I also feel his work is really important for the times that we're in, with the earth and the planet, and a lot of the work that he's doing now, like the sculptural work. It's almost like his pieces are kind of drawing or soaking up kind of detritus, or the kind of stuff that's just left in the earth, and they're absolutely magnificent. And they really should be seen everywhere.
Yes.
I feel they should be seen everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah. And Bernadette, you have a connection in the sense that Barry Cook used to live in your house, or is it the house next door?
He did, yeah. He lived in this house, and he built the studio that I work in now.
That you use, yeah.
So, and Paul only lives, well, in Innistig, which is only about 20 minutes away from here.
All right.
So, we're friends and we know each other for a long time. But so I've seen Paul's work develop as well over a long number of years,
Yes.
And it's always been tremendous, with this amazing attention to detail and amazing kind of artistic, creative sensibility to everything that goes on around him, And he is very modest, as you can see.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Amazingly modest and amazingly intelligent.
Yeah. Part of his charm, absolutely.
Part of his charm.
Yeah. Bernadette, thank you so much for that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Is there anybody else who'd like to make a comment?
Hello?
Yes, Derek.
John Daly is a world authority on contemporary and modern art. And to get such praise from John Daly of the Hillsbury Gallery, that's just mind-blowing.
Yes, absolutely. I must say I was quite taken.
John doesn't, sorry for interrupting, John doesn't share opinions.
Yeah.
He keeps himself to himself.
Yeah.
So that's rare.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks for that, Derek. Well put. Well put. Okay, anybody else? Catherine, hi there. I can't see you.
Oh, can you not?
No.
Oh, hang on.
There you are.
Oh, you see me now? Okay.
I can see you now, yeah.
Hi, Paul. How are you? Thanks for the presentation. Really interesting. I'm just wondering, do you get an awful lot of offers of materials from people? I'd imagine, like, I'm just thinking of a few things I have in my studio that might be useful to you here that I haven't used for years. Do you get offers from all sides of materials? Various things you could use?
Yes, there's I get some things like Anya Cook gave me a whole pile of Perspex sheets, and I get that sort of thing. I get a certain amount, but I there's so much stuff being thrown out in our own house. But someone will often say, Alan Coonahan will give me stuff that film material stuff, or other people like that. That's very useful. And sometimes you're given stuff that you don't know it has any use at all. And being of a mean mind, you try it, and it gives you a whole new direction. I would love to work with other people for the technology of when you see films being made and the wonderful things they can do. But I don't think I could work with a whole lot of people, and I'd also want to do it immediately. Which so the idea of long-term planning would be a disaster, I think. And I'd get crabby as well.
Not at all.
Very good.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, and thank you, Catherine. Danny says, Paul, great to see all this work. Still so full of sparkle, as Samuel Palmer used to say. Danny.
Great.
You must know Danny. And Catherine Green says, I think Bernadette put it so well by saying it is the collective detritus turned towards art. All right, Paul, listen, thank you very much. I'm so sorry we had so many technology problems at the start, but hopefully on the actual edited version or the recorded version, it might come out better, as it often does.
Yeah,
you know. So you listen, you're a breath of fresh air, and I really appreciate you taking the time and the fact that you had to leave home to go and do this.
No, I love the company of other professionals. You know, that's really what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all spend too much time in our own heads and in our own studios, you know, and it's great to realize that other people have the same disease, you know.
Yeah, couldn't have put it better myself. Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Paul. I appreciate your time and your effort.
Thanks, Alan.
And thank you. Thanks, Bernadette.
See you in a while.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And we'll see you again next week. Okay?
You have to turn it off. I don't know anything about this machine.
Just, you know, pull the plug out.
Oh, yes. Good one. Yeah.
If in doubt, pull the plug. All right. Thanks so much, Paul. I'm going to give you a quick buzz later on.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Alan.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.